It's the morning star drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the morning star drive, you know.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday, April 13th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we'll get some coronavirus updates, current news from around the world, the best class ever segment from Sean Jusung McMillan, and of course, it is Tuesday, so we're going to look into the book of Psalms. Alright guys, how you doing? Monday is over with, and we're already here all the way in Tuesday. Hope you guys are enjoying the week so far. It's just the beginning, which means there's plenty of time for us to put the words into action. Really thankful that all you guys are joining us here on the Morning Star Drive, so keep liking and commenting. I want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. Now, tonight, what do we have? We have a new Lab 78 live show at 8 p.m. Malaysia time. So over there in Korea, it's 9 p.m. It's about me, a Canadian living in Malaysia, some crazy stories, funny and some interesting and insightful things that I'm going to share with you guys while I've been living here. It's quite funny. A lot of cool stories. Some of them have to do with the language, culture, and some things are just funny things that are just happening because, you know, life, that's what life is. Funny things happen in life. Also, a last Sunday edition, we met Yuna Lee from America. Great interview, learning about her journey into this history. She is the National SS female rep, and she is a second gen. Great. I'm really thankful that she's running hard in this history, and she's someone that gives us hope for the future. So super fun and insightful. Go ahead and check it out. Now, last night we also had the Monday Zoom Bible study. That's now up. It'll be posted on Patreon probably by around 10 a.m. today, so go ahead and check that out too. If that's it, then is there anything else? Nope. So let's get the show started on the road. This is Tuesday. And it's already the 13th. We're in the middle of April already. Remember we just finished talking about it's the end of March? Dude, it is the middle of April already. This year of 2021 is flying by, right? We're getting closer and closer to the halfway mark. And I'm going to tell you guys, it's going to be so fast. You guys are going to be shocked when it hits like June and July. All right, so let's take a look at today's featured artist of the day. Today's featured artist is PGY from the Paper Music Associates in Korea. And this song is called Dr. Rain. Second song from Kumachang over there in Japan. That song is Open My Eyes, a song that was made for the opening of their brand new church that they bought over there in Japan. And also, last but not least, it is Renee live from Taiwan. So we're repping Korea, Japan, Taiwan, the big three over here in Providence. Renee live from Taiwan, and this song is called A Million Dreams from the Greatest Showman soundtrack. So guys, everyone, let's just make sure that everyone is supporting these member artists. And of course, I'm not asking you to support every single one. You know, there's going to be someone that's very that's kind of more dear to you, the one that you really like. Just make sure you pray for them. Put a little prayer in for them every single day, and it's going to add up to something big. All right, guys? So let's welcome our member artists from around the world.
I am Zaniac, well that's my name. I'm a 95 model, a defective robot. Oh, it's today. I have an appointment. I'm gonna meet my last moment. You're lucky to see me before I die. Oh, you're not sorry for that. I'm on my way to Dr. Rain. She's gonna bring me some sleeping pills. What a day. So good to see you, Mr.
Open the eyes, open the door, open my heart 見心探して Open the eyes, open the door, open my heart 未来照らす my way 揺れないで go 揺れないで go どんなかな迫害が来ても動じない強い信仰を持って立ち向かおうファミリーで go ファミリーで go 全ての人を受け入れられる家族のような温かさを持ってゆこう主の御心ファーストで言うといつも主の心情と共に主の言葉を最優先にして動き出そう伝えよう御言葉を実践し挑戦してナンバーワンを目指してゆこう全ての個性才能生かし挑戦しよう主役になろう伝えたい I'm happy, I'm happy 新しく You are shining, you are shining 伝えたい I'm happy, I'm happy 新しく You are shining, you are shining オープンでこうオープンでこう地域や社会の目線に立ち発展に積極的に貢献しよう近づいてこう近づいてこう全ての世代と距離を近く親しく接したならは僕をなそう縛られてる心を捨ててこう新しい取り組みをしよう主の言葉で心を燃やして動き出そうどんどんチャレンジしよう家族のような温かさで愛に満ちた教会しよう CGM オープンの先駆者として強みを生かし大胆になろう伝えたい I'm happy, I'm happy 新しく You are shining, you are shining 伝えたい I'm happy, I'm happy 新しく You are shining, you are shining 主の御言葉に出会い全て与えられた何もない私だったけど育ててくれたその愛をいつまでも忘れずにいようもらったものすべて捧げ御心なそう御言葉を実践し挑戦してナンバーワンを目指してゆこう全ての個性才能生かし挑戦しよう主役になろう Open the eyes, open the door, open my heart 見心探して Open the eyes, open the door, open my heart 未来照らす my way
I close my eyes and I can see a world is waiting up for me that I call my own. Through the dark, through the door, through where no one's been before, but it feels like home. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say I've lost my mind. I don't care, so call me crazy. We can live in the world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it
There's a house we can build. Every room inside is filled with things from far away. The special things I compile, each one there to make you smile on a rainy day. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say we've lost our minds. I don't care if they call us crazy. Run away to the world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. Oh, a million dreams for the world we're gonna make. However big, however small, let me be part of it all. Share your dreams with me. You may be right, you may be wrong, but say that you'll bring me along to the world you will see, to the world I close my eyes to see. I close my eyes to see. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. A million dreams for the world we're gonna make. For the world we're gonna make.
And there you go. That is Renee live from Taiwan, and that song is A Million Dreams from the Greatest Showman soundtrack. That is a cover that she did. Before that is Kuma-chung from Japan with Open My Eyes, and of course PGY from the Paper Music Associates in Korea, and that song is Dr. Rain. All right, guys, so let's get into some news going around the world right now. We'll start off with some coronavirus updates. In the world, 136.6 million cases with 2.9 million deaths, closing in on the 3 million mark, so it is getting pretty brutal. 2.16%. And the way that Sunstein put it is, imagine 2.9 million people dying. Like, how many times would you have to fill stadiums? That actually, if you go to America, the largest stadium, I believe, is about 100-something thousand people, which means that you'd have to fill that stadium completely 29 times, 30 times in order for that to reach this 2.93 million mark. So it's pretty incredible how many people have died around the world, more than any other war, more than any other, and this is all within a year. So it's pretty intense. Top 6 countries going by daily infection rates. We have the U.S. with 31.9 million cases, 575,000 deaths at a 1.8% mortality rate. India takes over number 2. Their daily infection rate's going really, really high. So they just overtook Brazil, 13.5 million cases, 170,000 deaths at 1.26%. Brazil, on the other hand, their daily infection rates aren't as high, but their mortality rate keeps going up. 13.4 million cases, 353,000 deaths, 2.62%. It jumps another 0.01%. France, 5 million cases, 98,000 deaths at 1.95%. Turkey, 3.8 million cases, 33,000 deaths at 0.88%, which is the lowest of the top 6. And Poland, 2.5 million cases, 58,000 deaths at 2.27%. Now, everyone, like I said this before, the expected mortality rate is going to be roughly around 0.1 to 0.3%. And the reason why all these numbers are so high, because a lot of these countries don't have very heavy testing. And because they don't have that, this is why we're going to see very, very high mortality rates. Like even over 1%, guys, is huge for these types of disease and death. It is very rare that it comes like this high. So they said most epidemiologists are saying it's going to be anywhere from 0.1 to 0.3. And the closest there is Turkey with 0.88%. But just know that there's not enough testing yet. We don't know exactly how many people until maybe after everything slows down, we'll know exactly how many people actually got this. Sweden, one of the only countries not to go into full lockdown, is at 1.59%. And Belgium used to be the highest mortality rate in the world, is down to 2.54%. Now let's take a look at daily infection rates. And I'm going to show you just how big it is here. India is now at 152,000 cases in a day, which is more than double of Brazil. Brazil's at 69,000. The US is at 67,000, which means that they're more than double of both Brazil and the US. So this is showing you how big the coronavirus is going over there. And of course, we talked about it during some of the current news. It's basically there's a lot of variants in there, and it's spreading very, very fast and quickly. Turkey, 52,000 cases in a day, France with 43,000, and Poland with 24,000 cases. So these numbers just across the board are going up a lot. So we'll see what's going to happen with this, even with these vaccination drives. I know that India has already vaccinated they've given out about 100 million shots already, so that's good news. But remember, they're 1.3 billion people. So 100 million is not that much. When you have the US is actually giving out 3.1 million shots a day. So that's how incredible, the incredible speed of the vaccines that are going over there in America. Let's take a look at Southeast Asia. In Southeast Asia, the Philippines is still on top with 12,000 cases in a day. And then Indonesia with 4,700. And then Malaysia, where I'm at right now, at 1,500. So they dropped down a little bit more. So that's some good news. They're at 1,800 over there on the weekend. So let's take a look now at the three top news stories for today. And we're going to go into Iran first. And they're talking about some nuclear facility sabotage. Okay, so a nuclear facility in Iran was hit by sabotage a day after it unveiled new uranium enrichment equipment, the country's top nuclear official says. So they didn't say who was to blame for the terrorist act, which caused a power failure at the complex called the Natanz complex south of Tehran on Sunday. But Israeli public media, however, cited intelligence sources who said it was the result of an Israeli cyber attack. So Israel has not commented on the incident directly, but in recent days it has ramped up its warnings about Iran's nuclear program. So the latest incident comes as diplomatic efforts to revive a 2015 nuclear deal abandoned by the U.S. under the Trump administration in 2018 have resumed. So on Saturday, Iran's president inaugurated new centrifuges at the Natanz site in a ceremony that was broadcast live on television. Now, centrifuges are devices needed to produce enriched uranium, which can be used to make reactor fuel as well as nuclear weapons. And it represented another breach of the country's undertakings in the 2015 deal, which only permits Iran to produce and store limited quantities of enriched uranium to be used to produce fuel for commercial power plants. So, what is the response from Iran? So on Sunday, a spokesman for the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran said that an incident had occurred in the morning involving the nuclear facility's power network. And they didn't provide further details, but told Iran's Fars News agency that there had been no casualties or leaks. So later, state TV read out a statement that said in which they described the incident as sabotage and nuclear terrorism. And they condemning this despicable move, the Islamic Republic of Iran emphasizes the need for the international community and the International Atomic Energy Agency to deal with this nuclear terrorism. Right, so Iran reserves the right to take action against the perpetrators. So the IAEA said it was aware of the reports of an incident but would not comment. And last July, sabotage was blamed for a fire at the Natanz site, which hit a central centrifuge assembly workshop. So here's the basics of the Iran nuclear crisis. Number one is the world powers don't trust Iran. So some countries believe Iran wants nuclear power because it wants to build a nuclear bomb. Of course, Iran denies this. And this is why number two, a deal was struck in 2015. Iran and 6 other countries reached a major agreement. Iran would stop some nuclear work in return for an end to harsh penalties or sanctions hurting its economy. So what's the problem right now? Iran restarted banned nuclear work after former U.S. President Donald Trump pulled out of the deal and reimposed sanctions on Iran. And even though new leader Joe Biden wants to rejoin, both sides say the other must make the first move. So how could Israel be involved in this sabotage? So Israeli public broadcaster Kan, citing unnamed intelligence sources, said the apparent power outage at the facility was caused by an Israeli cyber operation. Right? So a newspaper there also said that the incident could be assumed to be an Israeli cyber attack. So a defense analyst at the Ynet News website said that with Iran progressing towards nuclear weapons capability, it was reasonable to assume that the problem might not have been caused by an accident, but by deliberate sabotage intended to slow the nuclear race accelerated by the negotiations with the U.S. on removing sanctions. So later on Sunday, the Israeli PM Netanyahu said the struggle against Iran and its proxies and the Iranian armament efforts is a huge mission. So the situation that exists today will not necessarily be the situation that will exist tomorrow. And he did not reference the Iran incident directly. So the Iranian nuclear deal, known as a Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, has been in intensive care since Donald Trump pulled the U.S. out of it. So under the Biden administration, diplomatic efforts have been redoubled to revive it. But Mr. Netanyahu has warned against a return to the deal and declared last week that Israel would not be bound by a new agreement with Tehran. So, this is basically what happened. This joint deal that happened that President Trump pulled out of. It was a nuclear deal that only allows Iran to produce and store limited quantities of uranium enriched up to 3.67% concentration. Right? So uranium enriched to 90% or more can be used to make nuclear weapons, but they are limited to 3.67%. So Trump at that time said the accord was based on a giant fiction that a murderous regime desired only a peaceful nuclear energy program and reinstated crippling economic sanctions in an attempt to compel Iran to negotiate a replacement. Now, Iran, which insists it does not want nuclear weapons, refused to do so and retaliated by rolling back a number of key commitments under the accord. Right, so it has since accelerated the breaches in an attempt to increase pressure on the U.S., and they've included operating advanced centrifuges to enrich uranium, resuming enrichment to 20% concentration of the most nuclear isotope, right, and building a stockpile of that material. Right, so that's what's going on over there in Iran. Now, second news, we're going over to Western Australia. There's a cyclone called Cyclone Saroha. This storm makes landfall in Western Australia. The tropical cyclone has ripped across a 1,000-kilometer stretch of Western Australia, leaving a trail of damage. The Category 3 storm made landfall near the town of Kalbarri on Sunday with gusts of winds up to 170 kilometers an hour or 105 miles per hour. So the storm was later downgraded to a tropical low, though strong winds continued to move southeast. Residents reported smashed houses, fallen trees, and downed power lines. And Kalbarri residents were saying that the storm, which hit around 7 p.m. local time, raged through the night and was absolutely terrifying, right? And, of course, people going through it were all testifying about this. And a lot of these small towns have just been flattened, right? So weather authorities said the cyclone Saroha had sustained uncommon pace and strength overnight as it moved from Kalbarri and Geraldton on the coast and inland across the state's wheat belt. So the Bureau of Meteorology said while the storm had weakened, damaging gusts were still expected on Monday with peak winds of 110 kilometers an hour. And several towns in the state's southeast remain under red alert, meaning authorities advise residents to take shelter. So on Monday morning, emergency services agencies said it remained too early to assess the extent of the damage, and they had fielded 175 calls for help in the past 24 hours. And the Department of Fire and Emergency Services spokesman told the BBC thousands of homes are said to be without power. Right, so this is a huge storm going on over there, and already I believe 18,000 people have been displaced in Western Australia. And it's the way Sunstein said it. When God does something, He doesn't need nuclear bombs. But if you look at all the natural disaster in the world, like even an earthquake creates like thousands of times more energy than a nuclear bomb. Right, so let's really pray also for Western Australia. Last but not least on this, we have a new elected president of Ecuador. So a conservative former banker named Guillermo Lasso has won Ecuador's presidential election following a runoff vote, and his opponent, the left-wing economist Andrés Arauz, conceded defeat hours after polls closed on Sunday. With almost all the ballots counted, Mr. Lasso had won 52.5% of the vote compared to the 47.5. And Mr. Lasso, a 65-year-old three-time presidential candidate, told supporters he accepted the challenge of changing the country's destiny. And he said that it's a day in which all Ecuadorians have decided their future. And he also said they have used their vote to express the need for change and the desire for better days. So Mr. Arauz, meanwhile, congratulated his rival, and he says he will show the democratic convictions he has, and then Mr. Lasso will assume office on May 24th. The former banker, who has twice finished second in the presidential votes, represents the country's business sector, and he has vowed to break away from the leftist policies of past administrations that he says have dragged Ecuador down. And he has pledged to attract increased foreign investment, create 2 million new jobs, and increase oil production. So on the economy, he has proposed an increase in the minimum monthly wage, as well as tax cuts for small businesses and the creation of a fund to stimulate entrepreneurship. However, Mr. Lasso has been accused by critics of offering a continuation of the unpopular Lenin Moreno government, which has been badly battered by intertwined health and economic crisis. So according to Ecuador's central bank, the country's economy shrunk by 7.8% in 2020, and data from the National Statistics and Census Institute showed that some 500,000 people have remained unemployed as of January 2021. So that is some news for Ecuador. Brand new president, right-wing conservative, Mr. Lasso, right? And he's also vowed to vaccinate 9 million Ecuadorians in the first 100 days of his administration, and promised to lead better direct negotiations with the pharmaceutical companies producing the vaccinations, right? So that is the current news for today. Top 3 things. Hope you guys really enjoyed that, which means as we finish this, the worldly news, we're going to go into some spiritual time with some praise and worship. So we're going to start off with a wedding banquet of love, and then from one seed to a path of love. So, as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time together with praise and glory and worship to the Holy Trinity. And let's do this thinking and understanding that this is something we should be doing every single day because we love the Lord and we love the Holy Trinity.
Now the time's come, time for us all to sing the new songs. Everyone come and dance. Wave your arms, move your legs now. Shake your head all around. Move and shake your whole body. Let's sing the new songs of this new history. Let's go. Let's all run. All the praise and glory we offer only to heaven. Everyone rise, come on. Move your body, feel the music, dance as one. Just wave both of your hands, shuffle your feet, while matching the beat and singing with happiness. Ha! Full of joy, God and the Spirit watch. They can't help but laugh, dancing along, dancing with them. We are strengthened, rise up in new story. Let's make this wedding banquet for 1,000 years as we fulfill God's perfect world of love. We'll make it awesome. We'll run without regrets as our souls and spirits live as owners. Forever up in heaven, that great eternal world. We're loving God forever, loving the Holy Spirit now and always. We will live with the Lord forever. Cha, 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 cha. Cha, 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 cha. Cha, 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 cha. Cha, 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 cha. Cha, 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 cha. Cha, 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 cha. Ho, 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 ho. Let's make this wedding banquet for 1,000 years as we fulfill God's perfect world of love. We'll make it awesome. We'll run without regrets as our souls and spirits live as owners forever up in heaven, that great eternal world. We're loving God forever, loving the Holy Spirit now and always. We will live with the Lord forever. We will live with the Lord forever. We will live with the Lord forever. Cha 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 cha, cha 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 cha, cha 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 cha. Cha 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 cha, cha 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 cha, cha 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 cha. Cha 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 cha, cha 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 cha, cha 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 cha. Cha 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 cha, cha 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 cha, cha 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 cha.
Save us, they sent us one seed. That seed was sown and blossomed on the earth. And from that seed, history of the New Testament grew. From one seed, that golden field was made. History has passed and gone away. A new time has come, a new seed has been sown upon this earth. And from that seed alone, the field of heaven grows. The harvest goes on as spirits rapture up to you. Till I can't preach anymore, like you will be a seed. Now, like a seed becomes a golden field, I will sow my life and spread this history all throughout the world. And just as you, my Lord, were thankful all the time, I will do the same. I'll harvest and transform myself. Oh my Lord, you gave yourself and became the seed become a seed.
Since I have come, you've come as well. And today we become one with God, one with the Spirit. We unite on this path of love. We must walk now and for all eternity. This path will never change. Hear the word flows without end. Proudly we go on, always for providence. Now and always hope will shine brighter than the sun. This eternal love and hope forever shines bright. Finally, this love of ours fulfilled God's will at last. The Lord our God's promises will not fail, they will stand without change, now and for all eternity. Finally, this love of ours fulfilled God's will at last. The Lord our God's promises will not fail, they will stand without change, now and for all eternity. Since I have come, you've come as well. And today we become one with God, one with the Spirit. We unite on this path of love. We must walk now and for all eternity.
And that was Path of Love. Before that was From One Seed, and of course, A Wedding Banquet of Love. All right, guys, so here it is. We're going into our word study for today. Hope you guys enjoyed that time of praise. And today's word study, because it's Tuesdays, we always go into the scriptures of the week. And, I really, really wanted to go into the Lord's Gospel. However, we don't have much information on it, just those 3 verses, which this entire sermon is based on. So it's pretty intense and pretty amazing. There's just not much history behind it, except for the history itself that it was the first Sunday service ever using the Lord's Gospel, right? So that in itself is a historical moment, but I just don't know enough about it. So I hope that in the future we'll be able to get more information and more background on this Lord's Gospel that is being written right now. All right, guys. So let's get into the other book that we're looking at was in Psalm chapter 94. So we are going to look into the book of Psalms. Okay, so let's take a look at the book of Psalms together. So when you look at each and every one of those individual Psalms, they come from very diverse periods of Israel's history. Okay, but of course, even though they come from very diverse periods, at every stage they served as a songbook for God's people at each stage, right? So David wrote about half of the Psalms, and his role as king was more than that of a ruler. Okay, so he was to represent and even kind of embody the people, and their well-being was tied to his faithfulness. So David then writes as a representative. And the readers must discern whether the emphasis of a psalm is more on his role as ruler or more on his role as ideal Israelite, in which he is an example for all, right? So the historical occasions mentioned in the psalm titles help the reader to see how faith applies to real life situations, right? So let's take a look at some of the key themes in the book of Psalms. Right, so in the Psalms is fundamentally the hymn book of God's people, and it takes the basic themes of Old Testament theology and turns them into song. So let's look at the key themes. Like there's monotheism, obviously, talking about the one God, the ruler, the maker of all. And basically will vindicate his goodness and justice in his own time. And everyone must know and love this God whose purity, power, wisdom, faithfulness, whatever you want to say, unceasing love are breathtakingly beautiful, right? The second theme we'll have is creation and fall. So though God made man with dignity and purpose, all people since the fall are beset with sins and weaknesses that only God's grace can heal. Right, so there's a second one. Third theme is election and covenant. So the one true God chose a people for himself and bound himself to them by his covenant, and this covenant expressed God's intention to save his people and through them to bring light to the world. And the next theme is covenant membership. So in his covenant, God offers grace to his people, forgiveness of their sins, the shaping of their lives to reflect his own glory, and a part to play as kind of a light to the world, or to the Gentiles, you might want to put, right? So each member of God's people is responsible to believe God's promises and grow in obeying his commands. And those who do this enjoy the full benefits of God's love and find delight in knowing him, right? So the well-being of God's people as a whole affects the well-being of each member, and each one shares the joys and sorrows of the others. And when believers suffer, they should not seek revenge, but should pray instead. Okay? And they can, and of course, when they pray, they can be confident that God will make all things right in his own time. And of course, the last theme is eschatology, or the study of the last days. It's a story of God's people is headed towards a glorious future in which all kinds of people will come to know the Lord, and the personal faithfulness of God's people kind of contributes to God's ultimate purpose. And of course, the Messiah, the ultimate heir of David, will lead his people in the great task of bringing light to the Gentiles, kind of thing, right? So those are like the themes. Now, there are different types of Psalms. Okay, so there's basic categories of psalms, right? Like there's one type of psalm is called a lament, which is a troubled situation before the Lord, asking for help. Okay, another one is a hymn of praise, which call God's people to admire God's great deeds and actions, and attributes, whatever it is. There's hymns of thanksgiving, right? There's hymns celebrating God's law. There's wisdom psalms. Right? Songs of confidence, royal psalms, which present kind of the Davidic monarchy as the vehicle of blessing for God's people. There's historical psalms, and there's also prophetic hymns. Okay? So we know that the psalms are working all the way through from the reign of Saul through David, Solomon, and then also the fall of Judah and the exile too. So that these Psalms are written all over these 4 different time periods. Right, so once we know this kind of gives us a good daily background of what it is, and like I just said, the Book of Psalms is like hymn book. It's a prayer book. It's a wisdom. There's a literature of wisdom, part anthology of poems concerning Israel and God, and the subject matter is very, very broad, right? Very broad. Like it proclaims praise and prayer for God, and then on the other hand, it embraces human experience as intimate. There's one part in Psalm 35 that not David. It's a lamenting of a lost mother, right? And then the Psalms are very distinctive in the Old Testament in that most of it consists of people talking to God, right? So, and although thousands of years old, virtually all the Psalms in one way or another mirror our own struggles and joys. So whatever a particular Psalm subject may be, each gives kind of a voice to an emotion we feel as we grapple with the issues in life. And some Psalms are like capturing God, the delight in God as we experience like God's divine presence. When we go through a very difficult situation, that obviously ends up in a good ending, right? And others express like raw emotions like anger, grief, struggle, figuring out why did God do this and why did God do that. And, in some of the Psalms, God speaks, and in others, God is silent, and some find resolution while others leave us it's very, very unanswered, right? So the Psalms, they're not all written by one person at one time. As we know, it's going through 4 different eras or periods. And it's very, 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 very broad and very vast of what it talks about. So the study of the Book of Psalms authorship, as well as its dates of composition, settings, purpose, uses, whatever it is a major field. Just that itself is a field in biblical studies of figuring out who all the authors are and such. So the tools of there's so much analysis to figure out who is speaking and what time period it was brought into, right? So throughout the 150 Psalms, there are the work appears regularly, and sometimes the Psalms' interest in work lies in individual ethics, integrity, obedience to God, in your works that you're doing, dealing with your enemies, opponents, anxieties about the success of people who are not morally or ethically sound. And other Psalms take interest in like ethics of organizations, whether it's the organization of a small household or an entire nation. So it's very, very interesting how broad and vast it is. And of course, they say there are, when you read the Book of Psalms, there's 5 books, the 5 books of Psalms, right? So it's divided to 5. Book 1 is Psalms chapter 1 to 41. Book 2 is 42 to 72. Book 3 is chapter 73 to 89. Book 4 is chapter 90 to 106. And Book 5 is 107 to 150, right? And we don't really know why they are split into these books. The reasons for the history of why they're split into these 5 books, we're not really sure. But Book 1 focuses heavily on the experiences of David. And Book 2 speaks more of David and the Davidic kingdom. Book 3 is kind of a lamentation and complaint. And, because, if you go to the very end, it ends with this Davidic covenant in tatters and the nation in ruins. And then Book 4 is human mortality. But it also speaks triumphantly of God as the great king who rules all. And then Book 5 is a mixture, but it ends in celebration as the nations and all creation worship the God of Israel, kind of thing like that, right? So this is the Book of Psalms. It's very vast. Like we were talking before, you would actually have to spend an entire major on just who is the author and when was it all written. So I hope it's something that all of us can understand a little bit better. But it is a very, very big, it's got 150 chapters, many themes. David wrote half of it, and we're still trying to figure out who wrote the other half, right? Well, I'm sure there are some authors out there, but I haven't looked so deeply into that yet. Okay, so that is the Book of Psalms. I hope that kind of opens up our minds a little bit more to reading the Book of Psalms too. Okay, which means we're going to get into the Song of Choice. Song of Choice today is a song that I heard on the radio. Well, I was at a restaurant, a cafe today, and I heard this song playing at that cafe. It was a song originally from The Police. It's called Every Breath You Take. So I was looking for it. I couldn't find it, but I found an awesome funk version from Scary Pockets. So it's a great song from The Police with Sting, right? Every Breath You Take. And this is covered by Scary Pockets, and it's a funk version. So this is Scary Pockets with Every Breath You Take.
1, 2, 3.
Every breath you take, every move you make, every bond you break, every step you take, I'll be watching you. Every single day, every word you say, every game you play, every night you stay, I'll be watching you. Oh, can't you see you belong to me? How my poor heart aches with every step you take, every move you make, every bond you break, every claim you stake, every smile you fake, I'll be watching you. Since you're gone, I've been lost without a trace. I keep at night, I can only see your face. I look around, but it's you I can't replace. I feel so cold and I long for your embrace. I keep crying, baby, baby, every breath you take. Oh, can't you see you belong to me? How my poor heart aches with every breath you take, every move you make, every vow you break, every claim you stake, every smile you fake, I'll be watching you. Oh, every move you make, every step you take, I'll be watching you. I'll be watching you. Every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. I'll be watching you. I'll be watching you. Every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching. Every breath you take, every move you make, every bond you break, every step you take, every single day, every night I say, every breath you take, every word you say, every single day, every move you make, every word you say, every smile you break, every claim you stake, every move you make, every breath you take, every breath you take, every breath you take, every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you.
And just another great cover of another song. That's Every Breath You Take from The Police, and that was redone by Scary Pockets in a funk version, all right? Hope you guys really, really enjoyed that. Which means we're leading into, it is Tuesday, guys, which means we do have a special segment. Today's segment also, well, we all know this. It's been going on for like 35 weeks already. This is Sean Jusung McMillan over there in Texas, in the US of A, and this is the best class ever.
How well do you know yourself? How well do you know others? Is it possible to even say, since you have only ever heard your own thoughts, felt your own feelings, and experienced what you have experienced? And who knows how really similar or different our experiences are? There is a scientific way to approach this question. Today I will introduce the Big Five personality traits, which has become the standard by which psychology uses data science to determine what are the major differences between people. How are you different and similar to others? Let's find out. My name is Sean Jusung McMillan, and this is the best class ever. At understandmyself.com, you can pay a small fee to take an extremely scientific personality test, which will grade you against everybody else. It's like an IQ test, except it grades you along 5 different scales, and scoring higher or lower on each scale is not necessarily better or worse. It's just different. The reason why we say it's scientific is it's not designed by any one psychologist's ideology. Instead, it is arrived at through sheer data. They started by taking a large number of personality questions without regard for quality. It doesn't matter how good the questions are, because we'll just take 100 questions here and another 100 questions there, and then test them on the subjects. We'll let the data tell us which questions are good and which ones are bad. Then we can throw out the bad ones and keep only the good questions that are useful. How do you know if you have a good question or not? If everyone answers it in the same way, then it's a bad question. But if you get different answers from different people, then it genuinely differentiates personality. So we'll keep the questions that differentiate people, and then group those questions that seem similar to each other by looking at their wording, and try to see what are the traits or groups that seem to emerge from the data. After doing this, they found that there are 5 to 10 different axes along which people's personalities seem to differ. Each of the big 5 separates into 2 smaller categories. So we can look at this as either 5 or 10 different differentiations. Today I'll explain the first 2, which are a little bit more complicated to explain, and then I'll do the rest in the next lesson. Now, understandmyself.com does have a small fee. There are free versions out there, but I don't think you will find them very helpful. If human beings can be differentiated, and those differentiations are embedded in the human language, then these are the ways in which they differentiate. There are entire college course lecture series on the subject, but I will give you a crash course for our purposes here. And remember, a person can score high or low on each of the 5 traits, but remember, to score high is not better or worse, it's just different. We've got an easy acronym to remember the big 5. We're going to use the word ocean. O-C-E-A-N. O stands for openness, which divides up into intelligence and creativity. C stands for conscientiousness, which divides up into orderliness and industriousness. E stands for extroversion, which divides up into enthusiasm and assertiveness. A stands for agreeableness and divides up into politeness and compassion. N stands for neuroticism and divides up into volatility and withdrawal. Openness divides up into intelligence, as measured by an IQ test, and creativity. Now, typically, a person who is highly creative is also usually highly intelligent. But it is important to understand that a person can be very intelligent without being creative. For example, some research found that many lawyers at the top of their field scored exceptionally high in intelligence and conscientiousness, but they were found to be extremely low in creativity. But on average, a person who is high in creativity is likely to be fairly high in intelligence. Now, we also need to get into the definition of creative. Now, in psychology, we define creativity as someone who is able to create something that is both novel and useful. Novel meaning something new, and useful meaning other people find it useful. Now, the first illusion we must break is the idea that everyone is creative. Let's be honest with ourselves. Most adults are not creating original music compositions, writing original stories, creating original art, reinventing a new style, inventing new products or services that don't yet already exist, or creating new markets for business ideas that no one has ever tried yet. But even for the small minority of people who are creating new ways of doing things, and doing so successfully, how many of them are doing so in a way that is useful to anyone else? Not everyone is interested in being original, and not everyone should be. I found out about this when I stumbled into a short video clip of one of Dr. Jordan Peterson's lectures on creativity. In it, he articulately explained that the theory that everyone is creative is ridiculous. If everyone was creative, then the word itself would lose all usefulness as a way to differentiate personalities. He also explains the crux of the creative. Creativity is a high-risk, high-reward strategy, meaning most people are statistically unlikely to ever make any money from their creations. But the few who are successful will be exceptionally successful, due to the Pareto distribution, which I have explained in another lesson. and also due to the many business hurdles one must overcome to make more money on something the marketplace does not yet know exists. This is by no means a conservative, safe strategy. There are no promises of security for the artist or the entrepreneur. Yet creative people have a fundamental human need to produce creative work. If they avoid creative behavior out of pragmatism, then it can feel as though they are denying a part of their soul. Most of us never become more than hobbyists, and the hobby itself can be very expensive. But the bright side of creativity is it opens us up to human experiences that most people will never know. The thrill of bringing something new into the world and seeing others find utility in our creations is extremely rewarding. Art is also one of the few things in this world that actually gains value over time instead of losing value. We, the creatives, make the world a more beautiful place. Without us, there would never be anything new ever. And people love new useful things even if most of them are not capable of producing them like creatives are. People who are high in openness see everything as being connected. We love learning about new subjects because we are good at finding relationships between completely disparate, seemingly unrelated subjects. Now let's talk about intelligence. This, honestly, is not my favorite part to talk about. There is a lot of ugly but honest things to say about IQ, and it is almost universally considered better to score high as opposed to low, which makes this a very sensitive subject. Realistically speaking, one only needs as much intelligence as required for their level of work. We don't find that having an extremely high IQ is helpful to people if their work doesn't require it. It is entirely possible for a person to be extremely intelligent, but still totally useless. IQ alone does not make a person good at their job, but it is the highest predictor of success. People with low IQ are no less valuable, but it is important to recognize that at least 10% of the population has an IQ of less than 80, which means even the military, which wants to accept as many people as possible, finds that no amount of resources will make this person able to handle the duties of a soldier. That means 1 out of 10 people simply are not capable of following written instructions well enough to take on a job. Even the most remedial jobs require us to follow instructions in detail, which can often be too complicated for a person with low IQ. It's not something the public likes to talk about, but it is unfair to expect more of someone than they are capable of. There might be welfare available for this part of the population, but they could very possibly be unable to fill out the necessary paperwork or unable to navigate the bureaucracy to get what they need. And having an extremely high IQ is no cakewalk either. And having an extremely high IQ is no walk in the park either. People who don't find their work mentally challenging can often feel they should be given more difficult work, but they might not have the wisdom to be entrusted with more responsibility. They could easily feel they are not living up to their potential or become resentful of both the people around them or an authority over them who have less intelligence. Conscientiousness. Conscientiousness divides up into orderliness and industriousness. People who are high in orderliness are very organized, timely, clean, tidy, and appreciate systematic order, rules, and hierarchies. They appreciate the borders that keep everything separated. If you've ever lived with someone before, then you know that people definitely vary in their needs for cleanliness and order. Some don't value orderliness at all. Industriousness is how productive a person is. Personally, I have always felt the pressure to always be producing. When people would visit my house, my parents would immediately begin to present to the visitor all of the new projects, art pieces, and new points of pride to be found within the house. I quickly inherited this trait and found myself always working on something new and ready to show it off to whoever would listen. It's exciting to share about my projects with other people. Some people might find my boasting distasteful. But those who really know me know that I'm not showing off out of a narcissistic need to be acknowledged, but out of a genuine desire to share and admire the beauty of the art that I or anyone else have created, or to get excited about the novelty of an experiment I'm working on. If I spend an entire day, or God forbid an entire week, without something new to show off, then I feel like I have not fulfilled my potential, and I cannot help but feel disappointed with myself. This would make me highly industrious. After intelligence, conscientiousness is the highest predictor of success within any hierarchical structure. Hierarchies are based on the rules and our ability to follow them rigorously. This became extremely apparent to me when I became an art teacher. I tried to make my classroom as creative as possible, but fair, objective grading systems simply do not consistently reward the student who creates something truly divergent or creative. Instead, they reward the students who turn in their work on time, in detail, according to the rules given by the teacher. Even in art class, I found that my more creative students made worse grades, even if they could draw better or had more stylized work. If they were low in conscientiousness, they simply could not turn in their work at the end of the week because they turned it in late. They didn't know where they had placed it, or they had not bothered to keep up with it at all. I warned them that I would continue to give them poorer grades because I knew that being able to keep up with their work and follow the rules in detail would be a critical life skill for these students. It's important to know what your natural temperament is and what weaknesses you may fall prey to. Now again, it's not better or worse to be more conscientious. People who are low in conscientiousness are actually far more spontaneous. They could possibly be the life of every party because we don't know what to expect when they come around. And if they don't come around, all of those who are high in conscientiousness are going to be extremely predictable and, let's be honest, quite boring. Now it's interesting to look at these two first personality traits, openness and conscientiousness, as it relates to political ideologies. It turns out liberalism and conservatism aligns perfectly with these two personality traits. People whose political ideologies align with radical liberalism and radical conservatism also differentiate along the personality traits of openness and conscientiousness. Radically liberal thinkers tend to be high in openness and low in conscientiousness. Radically conservative thinkers, on the other hand, tend to be high in conscientiousness and low in openness. A recent study by morality researchers found that conservatives value patriotism and authority. They want to preserve the rules and they appreciate the already established hierarchies. They work hard, hold themselves to high standards, and appreciate the rewards given by authorities. They are, in other words, very judgmental, not only of others, but also of themselves. Liberals, on the other hand, value equality, compassion, and justice. Radical liberals are more than happy to throw out the old systems and replace them with something new in the hopes of creating a world that is more just, a world with more equality. Both value systems are critical to maintaining peace in the world, and the tension in finding the appropriate compromise between the two is what keeps the world struggling to improve without going off the rails. As Jordan Peterson once said, we need liberals to start new businesses, but we need conservatives to run them. Now, we still have not explained extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. But we will get to those, I promise, in the next lesson. For useful links and graphics, more lessons, or to subscribe to my podcast, feel free to visit www.bestclassever.org.
And there you have it. That is Sean Jusung McMillan over there in Austin, Texas. Great, another episode of Best Class Ever. Hope you guys enjoyed today about the big 5 personalities, something that you guys can take a look at your own personalities too. What does that mean, guys? It means that we've come to the end of today's podcast here on this wonderful Tuesday. Hope you guys have an amazing day, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in